used to be officially an Aish employee, at least on paper. They stopped bringing me in. I'll talk to Bradley about it. Hashem, how's everybody doing? How you doing? Hashem, steiging. It's been a long time since I've been in this beis midrash. It's a hey, look at beis midrash. This beis midrash. Hashem. So, say maybe it was I don't know how many years ago now, maybe 3-4 years ago. I was down here at the Kotel, and Matchas heard this story before. I heard this story. And while I was at the Kotel, there was a young man who came up to me. Hashem, very sweet and gentle bacher. He had a white and a kippah, some jeans, a t-shirt, maybe a sweater or something around him or whatever. And he came up to me and he spoke to me with that funny English accent some of you guys have. And he came over to me and he said, Reb Nissim, do you have any eitzah for me? Any advice? He says, I come from a very, very stark and very strong Litvisher family back in London. I don't remember where he was from specifically, whether it was Golders Green or Edgware, I think it was one of the two. And he says, wherever he was from, he says that his family is very, very stark. And he says that he needed advice because he started getting close to Breslov. And he says, I know you're Breslov, but do you have any eitzahs for me? Because ever since I became a Breslov, my family told me now I need to be learning more, I need to be davening more, I need to be, what's the advice? So I looked at him and said, I don't know if there's any eitzahs for that. I could tell you that at the time that Rebbe Nachman of Breslov had came to the city that was adjacent, I think, to Nimirov, Reb Noson of Breslov heard about him, and he saw that everybody that came back from that person was on fire for Hashem. And he says, I have to go meet the tzaddik. And after time had passed, Reb Noson himself became very close to Reb Nachman. And his father-in-law was a big, big Talmid Chacham, a huge, huge Talmid Chacham, Reb David Auerbach. And he came to visit his daughter, and his son-in-law, but Reb Noson wasn't there. He was going away. He was by his Rebbe. And she said to him, Tati, I want a divorce. And he said, why? What's wrong? She's talking about Reb Noson. She wants a divorce from Reb Noson. He says, why? Did he stop davening? Did he stop learning? Did he stop at everything? She says, no, more. Everything is more. So I looked at this young man and I told him, I said, the day you became a Breslov, your family be telling you to slow down, not to pick it up. Yiddishkeit at its finest requires us, all of us, that when a person realizes, like I said upstairs, I don't know who was upstairs, but if we realize just a little bit of how much Hashem loved us, Reb Noson of Breslov said we would drop the world and we would run after Hashem. We would run after Hashem if we knew just a small tipa, just a small little bit of how much it is that Hashem loved us. Nothing else in the world would ever matter to a person. Because they realize, in this generation, where we hear a lot of Hashem loves you, I love you, Hashem loves you, Hashem loves you, so we think that means to take it easy. But if a person realizes that Hashem actually loved them, it will instill the person with a sense of achrayus, that I don't want to let Hashem down. One of my biggest tefillahs that I daven to Hashem over and over again, as I am a Breslov, no secret, but I try to spend at least an hour every day with Hashem, alone in seclusion, and I talk to my tati. And I ask Hashem as much as I possibly can, Hashem, please don't allow me to settle for mediocrity. Hashem, I could have chilled as a goy. I could have been chilling. But Hashem, now that I've come to you, I didn't come here for mediocrity. I didn't sign up just to get by. A person has to know that Hashem loves them and what it actually means. What it does to a person after they realize that Hashem loves you. I had a beautiful, beautiful Suda the other night, the Shabbos night, inside the Sukkah. And ended up, you know that the Torah is good at the table when you forget that you're supposed to get to the main course, Nobody got to the main course. We're still hacking, going back and forth, everything. It was a very, very deep sugya. And I asked everybody the question. I said, what's higher? Is it higher to say to Kodesh Baruch Hu, I want you? Or is it higher to say to Hashem, I need you? What's higher? So some of it's a matter of semantics. Already by the time we're in English, does need mean that I have an obligation? Or does need mean kisufim, have a very strong want? What does need mean to the person? So we all went back and forth. At some point I realized, I said, let me rephrase the question. I said, if there was a baskol, if there was the ability for a person to hear a baskol come from Shemayim and say to a person, and you heard from Hashem, I want you, or if you heard Hashem, I need you, what's going to instill inside a person a bigger achrayus? Most people said, if I realized that Hashem needed me, that I would have a bigger achrayus. So the way that I understood need was kisufim, with a great yearning to be close to Hashem. That each and every person has. Some people have encountered it, some people have not encountered it yet. But there's for sure an emptiness within every single one of us that only Hashem can feel. And once a person realizes that they have this yearning, this great desire, this great need to be close to Hashem, a fire turns on. And it's very hard to put that fire out. Day in and day out, all of us are fighting. We're all fighting so many different distractions. We just read Koheles. Some of us read Koheles. I don't know if everybody's in Minhag, but I think you guys read Koheles. Then I read Koheles. We read Koheles. I davened in a later minyan. We were too busy talking the night before about needing and wanting Hashem, so I went to a later minyan. And already by the time you're davening by a later minyan, already by the time you're davening around Hasidim, everybody's looking around. Should we say Koheles? Should we not say Koheles? Well, that's the minhag. Should we say it? We should say it. We should not say it. Maybe I'll say 5 minutes or whatever. So we go through the whole thing. But at the end of everything, Shlomo HaMelech lets us know that everything else is mamash feeding on wind. It's nothing. The ikr is doing Hashem's mitzvahs. And ultimately what David HaMelech tells us, kirvas Hashem tov, that's my tov. As being close to Hashem. And to the degree that a person realizes that, is how it affects the person's life. To the degree that a person is in touch with that reality, that the only good that there is for me is kirvas Hashem, that is going to dictate how the person lives. That's going to dictate how the person thinks. It's going to dictate the way that a person is in front of other people. Whether or not a person has a busha to do something, or to say something. On Hoshanah Rabbah, all from the festival Sukkot to Hoshanah Rabbah, it's the highest time. We're always stretching it out. No, Hashem's gonna hear us on Hoshanah Rabbah. Oh, Zeis Chanukah. Oh, we're pushing it off. Hashem's gonna hear us. This is the most auspicious time that we have right now available to us, especially from the Chag. We're at the climax of Sukkot, of the ultimate love of Hashem. Hashem's been giving us a big chibuk, a big hug, the whole entire Sukkot. We've been zocher to mamash be in the arms of Hashem, to be mamash underneath the hanefesh shechina and the ananei kavod, been feeling this love of Hashem. And this is the final night of this Chag for a person to seal the deal with Hashem. To seal the deal with Hashem. Last year, Hoshanah Rabbah, I fought. Different people have different minhagim to stay up all night. I stayed up all night crying to Hashem, and I walked back and forth, and I cried, and I walked back and forth to Hashem. And by the time, for whatever reason, Hashem gave me energy. I made it through nights, and I only plopped after I got back home. But it was something so special that I never realized. This is my first time doing it. The Hoshanah Rabbah, I know a lot of people stay up, they learn, whatever. That was my first time. My first time, I screamed all night with Hashem. And I can tell you, Rabbi Isai, nothing tastes better than when a person enters in to a real, truthful, and tangible relationship with Hashem, you have to know that this exists. You have to know that a person can accomplish it. One of the biggest nisyonos that I encountered coming into Judaism is that when I started learning about Torah, I started learning about Hashem, ultimately, in the way that I know Hashem now, but there was no Torah Shabbat Pei. I wasn't learning from many rabbis. I was conflicted with my own religion as a Notzri, and I picked up the Bible, and I started to read it from cover to cover. And I'm spending every day a few hours in Hisbodedus. I never knew the word before, but everybody else was praying, so I started praying. And the amount of emunah, the amount of fire that I came into with Yiddishkeit, there were so many things I had never heard of before. And one of the biggest problems that I've had, and I'm telling you this right now, and I'm saying it on camera in front of everybody, is how many times when I started to go into shiurim, and I heard that we can't, in this generation we can't, in this generation we can't, and this and that. The people that didn't believe it are the people who we run and go kiss their hand. We run to go hear shir from Reb Yaakov Addis. We run to go daven with the Yenuka. We run to go have shalashudas with the Ravichi Maya. I sat and looked at the fire of the eyes of Rav Chaim Kanievsky. I don't believe any of them believed that they couldn't. A person has to know how tangible it is to serve Hashem. They tell everybody that they can't. There's a beautiful sipur, if you ever get the chance to read, if you haven't yet, from Sipor Maisios, of the little princess, the lost princess. So there's one point of this story where this viceroy is out to go and find this lost princess. I'm not going to go into the whole entire story of what it is, but after this kisufim, this yearning for this lost princess, some say the princess is tefillah, some say the princess is emunah, whatever the case is, searching for this lost princess. Because all of us were put into this world with the Vedas. All of us lost something. All of us lost something. And our whole entire mission here in this world is to go and find it. And it's next to Hashem. Everything a person needs is next to Hashem. Everything that a person ever wants is next to Hashem. But a person has to go on the journey to go find it. So this viceroy is going to go look for this lost princess. And along the way, there's a lot of nisyonos. But he runs into these giants. And when he gets to these giants, they tell him, you're supposed to go to where? Find it at what place? Doesn't exist. He says, my brother's also, he's a giant over in this forest. Here, call to my brother, he'll tell you. He runs all of the winds of the world, and all the winds of the world respond to him at the snap of a finger. Go and ask him. So he goes and he asks the next giant. And he says, what? Doesn't exist. And it says in the end, he found it. He found the makom, found the place. I'm using it as an example. Rabbi said, do not listen to I can't. I tell Hashem all the time, Hashem, as much as I could possibly have you in this world, I want you. And it's so tangible. I'm going to leave you with the story. Baruch Hashem, I've been zocher to share with many different yeshivas. I want to be able to open it up also too for questions. I don't know, can I take questions from the guys? You trust them, Rabbi? Okay. I was zocher, Baruch Hashem, many years ago to be at a very, very interesting crossroads. They always tell me, don't push your son too much, He doesn't really have any problems yet. He doesn't know he needs Hashem. He still has you. So I said, okay, so I can't push him. But after a person had some problems, they know they need Hashem. So I was at a dock, and I had to make a major life decision. And if I would have went, say, to the left, it appeared to be that if I'd have went that way, that everything would have been secure. Things would have been more secure financially. I would have had more understanding of what it was. But there was something about that which was standing on the right that although it didn't have anything, and there was everything in the world that made sense for me to go that way, Hashem, my heart, was pulling me this way. And I knew it, and I was davening a lot about it. And I was standing at this dock, and I remember digging into my pocket and pulling out one of my notepads. And I started to write. And I wrote that every time I got into this place where I felt that Hashem was asking me to be moist and hanefesh, to really pull myself over the hump. Every time I got into this place, I knew I was very familiar with it. I wrote it down, what happened. I wrote down what the situation was, and then I wrote the result. I wrote about 8 different scenarios. And I put at the end, and I realized at the end, that every single time that I was most hanefesh, Hashem was with me. Hashem was with me. Hashem never failed me, not one time. So I knew that I could lean on Him. Now, to be very honest, the issue that I was dealing with in the actuality of it was something that was begashmius. It was a gashmius, the situation that I was in. And I started to think about this. Over the last few weeks, I've been thinking about it when it comes to Bitachon and Amunah. It's much more easier to have Bitachon and Amunah in the fact that Hashem will save a person, even as crazy as it is, from a financial situation, from a machla, lo aleinu, from whatever it is. But to have Bitachon and Amunah that Hashem is going to save a person, the ruchniyus, that's much harder for a person. To believe that this slump that I'm in, that I'll ever get out. That Hashem will come and take me out of this place. That I can actually come to that place of shmirah. I can actually come to that place of kedusha. I can actually come to that place in my limud, in my learning, where I'm learning lishma. I could come to that place of anivus. I could get rid of that gava. To have the emunah and the bitachon that Hashem could also save me beruchniyus. That's something else. That's Hoshanah Rabbah. That Hashem could save us. Hashem could take us out from our place. They ask for us to be most hanefesh. I don't know all the different hanagas, minhagim that a person may have, but if you can do whatever you can to stretch yourself, this Hoshanah Rabbah, to be most hanefesh for Hashem, to put a little bit more effort, whether it's in limud, whether it's in tefillah, whether it's in whatever it is. If a person would do it with all of their heart, we have a vada, Hashem will save a person. I don't believe it. I used to believe that it used to be a maybe. There is no ifs with Hashem. If a person throws himself 100% on Hashem, Hashem will take the person out. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that Hashem loves you. When I ask Rabbi Green, maybe, if anybody has any questions, I'll answer some questions before we leave Bradley. Okay, Bradley. I don't know who's the boss here, so I'm staying out of the way.
Why Breslov?
Why Breslov? Come on, and Aish, come on. I already Breslov this up over here. Okay, I'll give you the shortest answer that I can. So the way that I found Hashem was I told you I was learning Tanakh, and as I was learning, I'm spending a lot of time in Hisbodedus, a lot of time crying out to Hashem. And so the emes, by the first time I came into the community and all that, I was very excited and everything, but after time, I started to realize nobody was as excited about Hashem as I was, right? In fact, it started looking a little weird that hey man, you need to go to the Kotel, go chill out a little bit, and everything else. And so that fire I came in with, I started to feel like it was waning. And it wasn't until I started reading the Breslov books from Reb Nachman started talking about hishtapchus and hanefesh, started talking about Hisbodedus, and I said, you know what? I knew I wasn't crazy. If I'm crazy, there's a rabbi just as crazy. And so, Baruch Hashem, that's what really did it for me. Apart from the first, I guess I would say the first time it introduced me to Reb Nachman was Began Shalom, the book of Garden of Peace by Rav Arush. So when I started reading that, it started to change my, I think it changed my whole entire path. I started doing every day, I was doing 1 hour Hisbodedus. I didn't talk to Hashem about anything else except for my Shalom bias. And I tell you, to today, my wife is from. I was going 100 miles per hour in Yiddishkeit. She was going 35 in a residential. I started to read the book, and I went out every day. The book's like it's got a lot of misnagdis, but most people ask. I said, "Did you do the Hisbodedus?" They never did the Hisbodedus. They always tell me they try. It's against our nature. A person has to change his stuff. I was standing before Hashem every single day, only talking to Hashem about my marriage for hours straight, every day. And I saw from that, still today, my wife's firmer than me. So I'm both Hashem. But that was essentially it. I went to Uman, and after that, lost my luggage the first year, had all the manias, came back. If you could come back happy and you didn't have your luggage for 8 days, oh Hashem, I'm fine.
Was there any point in your journey to closer to Hashem that you thought you might burn out because you were going too fast?
Is there any moment where I thought I might burn out because I was moving too fast? No, there wasn't a moment where I felt like I was going to burn out, but there were definitely aliyahs and yeridas. The first time that ever really happened to me was the day I was Magayah. I remember the day I went out of the mikvah, I mamish felt like everything was so heavy, so hard for me. I felt almost to some degree like Hashem had left me. I had such sensitivity, right? And I remember the day I came out the mikvah, all that was like lost. I felt like it was very, very gone. It wasn't until that I encountered, I had a very, very long Shabbos meal with somebody, or we were arguing. It wasn't about needing or wanting Hashem. It was about whatever, different shittas, different ideas. Some of it was the person I was talking to, most would say was probably borderline kafira, the things they were saying to me, but it was really caused me a lot of agmas nefesh. So I remember going to a shir from my Rebbe, and he saw the way I was looking, and he said to me, "What's wrong with you?" And I told him the conversation I had. He said, it's tumah, go get it off you. Go to the mikvah. Go now to the mikvah. He said, and after that, go talk to Hashem. I remember I went to the mikvah. I felt like I left the body in the mikvah. Right? Came out of the mikvah, and Baruch Hashem, I was good. And but that was probably the toughest time that I had, was the realization. And I realized after some time what it was. Before you're obligated in the mitzvahs, there's no real big deal. Hey, you could be flying a kite. The moment that you have some obligations, it becomes very hard. But there was never a time where I felt as if I was burning out. And I'll use this moment to say this, that if a person falls in love with Hashem, it's much easier to do what you're commanded to do. If a person's loved one, their mother, their father, whatever, tells them to do something, it's much easier than a stranger, right? I always use the example. No offense to anybody who may be a practicing dentist. I have to say that now. I haven't said this in a room full of dentists sometimes. But when you go to the dentist, you think twice about opening your mouth if they tell you they don't have a good rap. They usually, you leave out of there not feeling the way you felt when you walked in there, whatever the case is. If your mother asks you to open your mouth, you open your mouth in a second because you trust your mother, right? So it isn't until a person has trust and love. And this is why I say that this goes alone. It's very, very hard for a person to stay the course. You may see a person steig. I'm just telling you, I never saw it. I never saw that a person can get to that place. There's no shortcuts when it comes to serving Hashem. There's no shortcuts. A person, and I'm telling you, the reason why I have this schmooze a lot of time with Bacham, because you're going to hear all day, Yomam V'Layla, how much you need to learn, and steig. And it's true. But we don't hear how much it is that we need to be involved. We need to love. We need to know whose Torah we're learning, right? That's the most important. That's what's going to keep the person. If I know whose Torah I'm learning, but if I only know about Hashem, but I don't know Hashem, right? It's going to be very hard to do what's required of me long term. I may be able to do it for a little bit, but long term it's going to be very hard. So if a person finds himself willing and able to fall in love with Hashem, it's going to be much easier to do the mitzvahs.
How do you define love?
I find love.
How do you define love?
So love is not really a definable term. It's defined, but it's not defined. On one level, most I've heard say that it's something that happens unconditional, but I don't think that's true, because I think people fall in and out of love all the time, right? So the love that we're talking about with Hashem is that we watch the characteristics of how it is that Hashem, when He loves us, doesn't mean on one level we'll see that Hashem will deal with us in a matter of din. We'll see that sometimes Hashem will have is the year part of that aspect, because year and ahava, to some degree, they meet each other, even though it's very hard to see how both of them But there's also the other side of it where Hashem's chesed, where He allows us to know that Hashem is with us. Love is taking us out of Mitzrayim, right? Love is giving us Torah. Love is protection from our enemies, right? And love at the same time is the patch when we don't do what we're supposed to do, right? Today we don't really give patches so much. But in the time of Shem, the way that He deals with us is all of those things encompassed. At the end of the day, you know that you can depend on Hashem because He's there for you no matter what, no matter how. So the closest that we could get to that and how we can at least mimic the love of Hashem is by our hitnagut and our actions. So the Tomer Devorah tells us how it is that Hashem reacts towards us, right? With a certain level of rachamim. You don't have rachamim like that on anything you don't love, right? So the way that Hashem is patient, He's long with Hashem, feeds us and gives us chiyus and gives us life. At the same time we're committing averas against Him. I mean, who could ever imagine? This is the love of Hashem. That's at least how I define it.
A lot of people think that when you become very religious and go down that route, a person changes. Like look different, act different, and change. But we learn that people that grow in religion, they end up, they're supposed to be the greatest version of themselves, and they stay who they are. So with yourself and your journey, have you experienced that you completely changed the person you were growing up? Or do you think you still hold some of those personal, values of humor and different things in your nature?
So let's play a game of semantics. I would say that a person most likely will come into who you are. Because, like I said, we all have Avedas. We came into this world, we all came missing something, right? At least we're missing something. So the Ramchal tells us in Nissim Black, a person is to make a tzelem for himself. And every day he measures himself towards that mold that he made of himself, meaning that my cheshbon hanefesh, my thoughts, are that there's an ideal me. Who is that person? How does he behave? How does he act? How does he talk? How does he walk? What's his relationship with Hashem? What's his relationship with others? And every day I'm measuring where I am today towards that perfect me, right? Who I am. So am I me? Or is that tzelem I made for myself, that goal of where I'm trying to get, is that me, right? So I think ultimately, if you're asking me personally, is there a correlation of who I am today with who I was before? Yes, but it was very much so buried. Like I tell you, I was a Muslim as a kid. I converted to Christianity when I was in my teenage years, and then had a stint in Messianic Judaism, which led me to actual Yiddishkeit, right? So through all those different things, do I ever feel like I worship a different God? I just say, no, I took levushim off of him. There's just different clothing. I took levushim, in a kosher way, okay? But I'm realizing the actuality of who Hashem is. It's not that the nations don't know from Hashem. They know from Hashem. But in that, I was able to realize myself every step of the way. I was able to learn things about myself. If a person doesn't have serious time of cheshbon and nefesh, of you spending this time alone and spending with Hashem, you will never know who you are. I guarantee you. And by the time you do, you may pick out a lot, because a lot of things that we have, you'd be like 80, 90 years old, thinking about it at that time. And by then, you're a different person, lagamri. Old people, after a while, they don't care about what they say. They'll start getting rude to you. Everybody knows. After you hit a certain age, So I think the emes of it is that a person comes into who they are. The more and more that they're osek in Torah, the more and more that they're osek in Avodah Hashem, then you will come to know who you are. But until then, we don't really know who we are. Because if a person can think about this, the polarization of what's going on in the world today, left, right, pro, against, this and all this. You think about all this nonsense. Most people parrot opinions that they're not really sure if they have those opinions. So are they being themselves? People say themselves. Some people, there's a Jewish guy. I'm sure that a lot of you guys know. Name what's his name? Gary V. You know Gary V? You know this guy? Okay, so a lot of guys know this guy, Gary V. Okay? This guy has probably the worst mouth I've ever heard. And this is coming from a person. Baruch Hashem, I'm telling you. So like, who you are. And I'm saying this not to toot myself in the horn. I have a lot as an individual that I need to work on. I tell you, one of the first things that went away from me was swear words. I haven't said a swear word since 2008. No, I haven't said a single swear word since 2008. Never, no nibble. So, and I'm telling you this. I'm not telling you this to Baruch Hashem, show bizocher. So, but I'm telling you this because for me, I'm very sensitive. When I hear curse words, they do something to me. I don't know what it is. I don't like to hear them. I don't, so if anybody was going to ask, have you listened to secular music? I can't. It's not my thing. So I can't hear it. But I've heard this, and I say, I'm just doing my thing. He doesn't usually say that. He usually insert some curse words as he's saying that. I'm just being me, or whatever the case is. I would say to any person, who they are, you don't know who you are unless you know who you are by Hashem. Who you are with Hashem, that is the real you. Because when a person's in the presence of Hashem, you can't lie, right? So if a person can learn Yomam V'Layla, and this is why Limud Torah is so much easier for him, and this is why I often say this, because I can keep my ego intact. The more Torah I can become a Talmid Chacham, and I can keep my ego intact. But the difference is when I enter into Avodah and I have to tell Hashem the truth about how much I'm not really holding. I'm not holding in this. Hashem, I need you in this. It's a vulnerability. It's very hard for me to get there. That crushes my ego. You understand what I mean? So if you don't have the two, you can't ascend. And you'll never know who you really are. So you have to have both, Torah and Avodah.
So you mentioned how we need to throw ourselves on Hashem and Bitachon. And I'm curious, I imagine it didn't start like that. How did you go about developing that relationship and that connection? Mm-hmm. Was it Hisbodedus? Was it something else? Was it a combination?
Mm-hmm. For me, it was a combination of both. Learning about Hashem, learning Tanakh. This is what I started with before I started learning actual Torah and Musar and Halacha and everything else. So it's the both of them. And I would say also too, there is such thing as, when you work out, you build muscle, right? So you work out, you start out with a certain amount of weights, a little bit. So a person, I heard one person say this one time. There was one of my close friends. He said my wife was giving a shiur to women, and one of the ladies asked her, says, how come when it is I ask Hashem for things like, to catch the bus on time, that the bus is going to be there, I have like a nice, the bus will come, or, if I daven for a parking spot, the parking spot will be there, I see all these little things. I say, but the big things, Hashem never answers me. Right? Don't we all feel that sometimes? And you know what she said to her? It was a Mamash Gavaldic answer. It says, on the little things, you believe Hashem. On the big things, you don't believe Hashem yet. Right? So it's a muscle. The more and more I throw on Hashem, the little things, I have to build it up. I have to be willing to place more on Hashem. So if I realize that Hashem was good to return to me, if I lent, let's say, took and lent Hashem $100, He gave me back my $100, okay, I could trust Him with maybe $150. I start to load up more and more on Hashem. So that's what it is. You have to build emunah, bitachon, together as a muscle. A person has to build it up with Hashem. And for me, that's the way I built it. Is that it was, one thing after the other. One thing. There are crazy things that I've been able to throw on Hashem that have happened that I would never advise a person to do. Right? I just wouldn't advise him to do. But I believed in Hashem that much, so you can't give these things over to somebody else. You can chizuk people, you can whatever, but you can't give over your emunah, your bitachon to somebody else. But you build it up as a muscle.
Last one.
But little. Huh?
Last question.
Okay, so you pick. I'm putting on Bradley. What'd you say? Happened to not with the truth? Very good question. Great. Home run. So, what was very clear for me was that, I'm not going to go too deep because I can answer this for hours straight, but one of the things was for me was that everything came down to whether or not Hashem's word was actually dependable. I'll tell you why. I came to a realization. I remember sitting there, and one of the first things that that threw me off is Notsui was the holidays. I started there, and I started to realize that not only were the holidays that they celebrate originally pagan days, but they're not even biblical as far as their canon. They don't even exist in their canon, right? So that was the first thing that they got me to start looking. So the more and more I started to dig, and the more and more, things that started to bother me. I remember at one point I sat down and I took a Tanakh, I put it on the table, and I said to Hashem, I moved it as if he was over there. I moved it, and I said, I'm going to read this from cover to cover, and I'm only going to look for your character, what you love, what you hate, whatever. And this, I remember saying this to Hashem. So after that, I went through the whole entire thing, cover to cover. And meanwhile, I was spending all this time with Hashem. I was fasting 3 days at a time, crying out to Hashem, and I was going like this for a long time. And at some point, through the Nevi'im, I think it was it was also in Zechariah and also in Yechezkel. There were two different things, right? So one where it starts to talk about all the tins of the nations that will come and grab the hem of the Jews. This is in the 8th chapter of Zechariah, are going to say, let me come with you. I want to go with you, for I heard that God is with you, right? So as that was happening, that's a complete contradiction, right, to Christian eschatology. Why do they fund so many Jews making Aliyah? Why do they fund? It's because eventually we're supposed to turn to them for the truth, right? But it's diametrically opposed to what the Tanakh actually says, right? So that was one thing. The other big thing for me was, I came to a realization that the entire integrity of God's existence, of what's happening inside of the Navi specifically, is the entire integrity of God's existence is based on the Jewish people. And Hashem is putting the integrity of his existence on the Jewish people. How so? You'll find over and over again, especially the Sefer Yechezkel, Amos, Hosea, that Hashem is saying, how is it that he's going to be sanctified in the eyes of the nations? When he brings Klal Yisrael back to its soil, right? So Baruch Hashem, we were zochah to be here. If I'm able to believe that from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, from Moshe Rabbeinu prophesying it to Yehoshua to all the Nevi'im, that Klal Yisrael is very different than all the other religions of the world. So he says, Hashem says, if you don't abide by his command, you'll be exiled, right? You'll be made small in number. You'll be hated by the nations, right? The land itself will become bare. All these things will happen. So if I believe the bad, I believe the good, right? Because what did I see? That all of Christ were coming back, one by one. From where? The four corners of the earth. What are we seeing? The rebirth of the land. That the land is again given its vegetation. This is what I saw. This is 36th chapter of Yechezkel talks about this. The land coming forth, giving forth its fruits in his blood. And I said that Hashem places the entire integrity of his existence on the Jewish people. Meaning, this is going to sound like heresy. It's not really true, but it's kind of true from what I'm trying to say. So don't click this up and put it on the internet. I don't want Rabbi Mizrahi coming after me or something. So the saying is that Hashem himself, by him placing his integrity of his existence on the Jewish people, a person could say that on one level, Kaviyoko says, if the Jewish people didn't exist, then Hashem doesn't exist. Why? Because although the world is trying to find all these different ways to disprove Hashem's existence, they're doing everything except for what Hashem said, try me and test me out. How will he be sanctified in the eyes of the nations? When Klal Yisrael, when the streets of Yerushalayim are inhabited again, when the kids are playing again, and you'll start to see that the vegetation of the land is gone. Hashem is saying the proof is in what it is that my word of what I'm saying is not out there, not in science, not anything else. Disprove it based upon what's actually happening. And I'm telling you, for me, that was the one thing that made me say, okay, Hashem is real. So that was it, as opposed to all the other religions. There's a beautiful idea. I saw by this, who was I talking to? Rabbi Singer. Rabbi Singer I was talking to him about this. It's a very interesting thing, at least by the other religions of the world, by Islam and Christianity. It's very interesting. If you don't believe in the religion, you go to hell. And Tanakh, there's no threats like this. Everything is things you'll be able to see. If the Jewish people became smaller, if they were kicked out of the land, if the land didn't grow, it's all things that you can see. Only thing you hear about Gehinnom is from your 5th grade Rebbe. You don't hear any of this stuff inside Tanakh. Hashem never gives a threat. Our Rabbis give the threat. But the Shem never gave the threat inside Tanakh. Why did he do it? Every punishment was something that a person could see. Followed by, and it ends with the bracha, of which we're also seeing with our own eyes. So, Hashem's word is money in the bank. I'm wishing you all a Hoshanah Rabbah that's mamish, full of fire, full of Aish. Bezat Hashem, we should all be sealed, mamish, for a good life. For kirvas Hashem, we should all be zocher to have a munah shlema. We should be zocher. Mamish said all of our tefillah should be answered. I don't trust these other chevra across the way. I really don't, but I'm really hoping that Trump didn't make this flight in vain. Yeah? All of the chatufim, Bezat Hashem, should be back home with all their family. And Mr. Hashem should be welcomed by all of Klal Yisrael and all of us, because all of us are also chatufim. We're all caught in the shtus and all this world and every distraction that's got us. We should also be freed back to our Father. Bezat Hashem. All the